What it do, cucksters? It's your boy, the hater, up in this piece. And I wanted to make a video about a concept that I mentioned in my previous video, and that is filler episodes. Now, a lot of newer fans, and when I say newer fans, I mean people that started watching around WrestleMania 28, you know? So like not that new, but like newer-ish, right? A lot of newer fans are used to this era of filler episodes, you know? And that's a problem, because they don't understand that there is an alternative, right? So they'll say things like, well, what's supposed to happen? Cody Rhodes is supposed to wrestle every week and get injured? Yes, if necessary, that is what's supposed to happen. Let me put it to you this way. Back in the day, we didn't really have the concept of filler episodes. You know what I mean? We just didn't. That wasn't something that anybody talked about, right? We didn't have episodes where nothing happened, right? Now, I'm not saying every story and every feud needs to progress every Friday or every Monday, right? You gotta pick and choose. But every week, something should progress, right? And that's why you need to have a lot of storylines. You know, for example, like on Raw, we've got several storylines, if you will, right? There really is only one. And the only storyline there is Liv Morgan and the Judgment Day versus mostly Rhea Ripley, but also to some capacity, Damian Priest, right? That's the only storyline there's there. Like the CM Punk Drew McIntyre thing, that's the same storyline we've had for months. And that's a great example to put forward my point, right? Like that storyline is going nowhere. You know, like if you compare the storyline before SummerSlam to the one on the Raw after SummerSlam, it's the same storyline, right? They still haven't resolved it. Drew McIntyre beat him. This shit's not gonna end until CM Punk gets the bracelet back, right? And at this point, what does Drew McIntyre want to do? He beats CM Punk. That's it. Move on, cuck. Move on, you know? CM Punk can go feud with somebody else. You feud with somebody else. It's over now, you know? But they're going to keep going with it. You know, we started a new storyline perhaps with Bronson Reed and Seth Rollins, but that's neither here nor there. The point I'm trying to make has nothing to do with that. It has to do with these discontinued storylines that take 3 months to advance, right? And as a result, we get a lot of filler episodes. Back in the day, this wasn't the case. You know, you had like a target, right? The pay-per-view, there was a target, and the pay-per-view was going to have X, Y, and Z matches, right? It's going to be this match, and that match, right? And every week, at the very least, some of the matches that were going to be at the pay-per-view, the storylines in those matches were advanced, you know? I'll give you a great example of a very low-level feud, right? There was a feud 1 month, right? It was a Backlash match, I believe. The feud was between Dean Malenko and Lita, right? The entire story was basically like Lita wants a light heavyweight title match, right? Dean Malenko wants a date with Lita, right? So he says, Lita, I want to go out with you. Lita says, no, Dean, I'm not doing that, right? And basically, Dean is like, yeah, you should. And she's like, no, I won't. Okay, that's like one episode, right? Next episode, Dean Malenko says, look, Lita, I know you want me. She's like, I don't, Dean, but I do want a title shot. And he says, look, I got a proposition. You know, I'll give you a title shot. If I win, you let me go on a date with you, right? And she's like, all right, fine, Dean, right? So then that happens. I don't know if it happened that night or the next week, but then that happens. Dean Malenko beats Lita, right? Lita is forced to go on a date with him. She comes out in a dress looking fire, right? Especially back in the day, you know what I'm saying? And she goes out on a date with Dean, and basically she's just being standoffish, right? And then Dean's like, look, you can't deny your feelings for me. This is part of the date, right? Because they showed the date. And then Lita says, all right, you're right, Dean, I want you, right? So they go to the hotel room where Dean gets ambushed by the Hardy Boys. As a result, at the pay-per-view, we get a 6-man elimination match. Eddie Guerrero, Perry Saturn, and Dean Malenko versus the Hardys and Lita, right? Great feud, great matches, great payoff, right? The payoff is the Hardys and Perry Saturn and Eddie Guerrero eliminate each other, right? Basically, Perry Saturn goes, Eddie Guerrero goes, and it's Lita and Matt Hardy. Dean Malenko pins Matt Hardy with a roll-up, and then him and Lita have a competitive match before he puts her in the clover leaf, right? And he gets out his frustrations, and she taps out, right? And then, by the way, if you ever go and watch this match, there's a part where Lita's like, I think I could beat him while Jeff Hardy's lifting her up. And Matt Hardy's trying so hard to like make out with her. It's so cringe. Just go watch it because it's clearly not part of the segment because Lita's like in the zone. She just had a match and Matt Hardy's like, it's okay, Lita. And he tries to like kiss her. It's very weird, right? Especially considering that she basically prostituted herself for a match at the light heavyweight title, right? But it's very cringe. And meanwhile, on commentary, you have Jerry Lawler being like, yeah, she thinks she can beat him, King, you know, like, because she obviously can't, right? But look at that, right? 4 weeks Every week something happens. It doesn't have to be something grandiose, but every week it's something different. Whereas nowadays, right, it's either cookie cutter or nothing happens at all, right? And when I say nothing happens, I don't mean that like nobody shows up, right? Because, you know, you can have for 4 weeks, you can have the Bloodline beat up Cody Rhodes and his friends. But that's not compelling, right? If the same thing is happening every week, that's not compelling. You need something to push it forward. So for example, when the storyline starts and Lita is just hanging out and Dean Malenko says, I want to go out with you, right? You're like, oh, interesting. I wonder what's going to happen next week. Next week, Lita says, I'll do it if you like give me a title shot and you win, right? So now you're like, oh shit, there's a match, a throwaway match, of course, but a match with consequences. So now you're looking forward to that match next week. You're like, oh, I wonder who's going to win, right? Obviously, over the week, you forget about the match, right? You're like, oh, whatever, right? And then Monday, you hear JR being like, and later tonight, we've got Lita versus Dean Malenko if she loses just to go out on a date with him. And you're like, oh shit, I forgot about that. That sounds like an amazing moment, right? And you watch. Nowadays, you don't need to worry about it, right? Here's what's going to happen. On Friday, Cody Rhodes is going to come out and he's going to cut a promo. They're going to establish a new challenger for him. It might be Solo Sikoa again. Who knows? Who cares, right? And then eventually, the next week, the guy's going to say, I want Cody Rhodes. Then they're going to have a face-off. Then they're going to have a contract signing. And if there's time, they'll have another face-off. This is a short, like, bracket, right? Meaning that, like, the situation between Cody Rhodes and whoever he's going to fight needs to be resolved much, much faster. You know what I mean? Because I think the next pay-per-view is in like a couple of weeks. So, you know, just take what I just said, divide by 2, and that's all you're going to get, right? Nothing's going to happen. In fact, nothing has happened with Cody Rhodes since the beginning of his title reign, right? It's been a bunch of the same shit. Oh, AJ Styles is retiring. Oh, great. Like, we know he's not. You know what I mean? We know that he just signed another contract as far as I thought, right? But the point I'm trying to make is there's too much filler. I mean, there's too much filler. Like, it's like, what does Tozawa do every week? What do the Wyatt Six do, right? Okay, that's a little bit different because it's a debut. But let's look at, for example, Carmelo Hayes and Andrade, right? What do? Nothing. They just hover around each other for a minute or two. And then eventually, what happens is just that, right? They hover around with each other and nobody wins, nobody loses. I mean, Andrade won twice, but did he really? Like, what did he win? You know what I mean? He just beat the same guy twice, and the same guy that he beat is a jobber. So, you know, it's just a filler match. It's like, and the way you determine if something is or is not a filler segment is you ask yourself, would the storyline change at all if these things didn't happen? Like, whatever the hell's going to happen with Carmelo Hayes or Andrade, none of it is going to be contingent on what's going on now, unless they put him in a tag team, which would be the worst tag team of all time. It would make no sense whatsoever, right? Same thing with a lot of stuff on NXT, same thing on Raw, right? It's like, what would change if Cody Rhodes cut one less or one more brown suit promo? Nothing, motherfuckers, nothing. Because the promo is the same thing. I have something to prove still. It's boring. It's filler. You understand me? It's filler garbage. Cody Rhodes and the rest of the wrestlers, right? Except for Judgment Day now, because they're actually in a legitimate program, in a legitimate storyline, right? But that too has had so much filler. Like, how many weeks did we talk about the Dominic and Liv Morgan storyline? How many weeks did nothing happen? How many weeks, motherfucks, on Raw did the match basically end with Dominic falling either onto Liv Morgan or vice versa, right? How many times did that happen? It feels like it happened like 3 or 4 times in a 1-month segment. You know what I mean? So with that being said, it's like, what are we looking forward to, right? Like, now maybe something else will happen, but I have a feeling that even that something else is going to be very fillery. You know what I mean? It's going to be very Fillary Clinton up in this bitch. You know what I'm saying? It's just going to be a bunch of filler. So what's up with that? You know what I mean? Now, here's the thing, right? I alluded to this at the beginning of this video. The newer-ish fans think this is just the way things are, right? Because they've never really seen, like, I know people go back and watch the Attitude Era on, you know, fucking WWE Network or Peacock or whatever, right? I know they do that, but I have a feeling that a lot of people don't go and watch it like they're supposed to, basically, right? They don't go watch, like, episodes of Raw and then go to SmackDown and then Raw again and go to SmackDown and then Raw again. Most people don't do that. Most people might watch the pay-per-views. They might watch, like, these, you know, like a special episode of Raw where there was a debut or something like that. But they're not out there doing, like, you know, the hard work, basically, right? And I'm not saying you should. I don't want to sound like a gatekeeping fan. I'm not saying that you need to go and do your research. That's lame. But I'm just saying that maybe if you weren't around and you think this is normal, consider the possibility that it's not. Consider the possibility that this is just the lazy version of WWE. That's what we're seeing right now. The lazy version of WWE. There is no other explanation as to why Gunther's push had to take 4 years. You could have done this in 4 weeks. Gunther comes out, beats up everybody, right? Has a powerful showing at the Rumble, and he is the first World Heavyweight Champion, right? Why not, right? The only argument I can think of is, well, they wanted to establish the World Heavyweight title as a serious title. Well, they didn't, right? They gave it to Seth Rollins. So you couldn't do that with Seth Rollins. If you wanted to bring back Goldberg and give it to him or something like that, then maybe, right? But you can't do it with Seth Rollins, so might as well just do it with Gunther, right? And instead of giving him a 1 year or whatever, 2 year Intercontinental title run, give him a 2 year World Heavyweight Championship run, right? And then under no circumstances do you have him job to Sami Zayn, right? And you've created a star 2 years before. That's what I'm getting at, right? The Gunther Intercontinental title run, if this was always the plan, was basically filler for 2 years. Because during his title run, during the magnificent Gunther Intercontinental Championship title run, how many memorable moments were there? Like, can you think of 5 promos that Gunther cut that were interesting during those 2 years? You can't. I know you can't. You can't even probably think of 5 good matches. But you certainly can't think of 5 times that Gunther electrified the crowd, because Gunther has electrified the crowd a total of 0 times, because he is a filler wrestler. You understand me? So filler segments and filler wrestlers need to go so we can make WWE great again. Cuckolds!